Man, what's happening, baby? It's your boy Dallas Clark, also known as Indo as my Nindo, and god damn it, I'm excited. You can't see my TV in the background, but it's got the pregame for the first game of the NFL season. God, oh my boy. I cannot contain my excitement right now. I want to get this video out here real quick so that way we can get everything taken care of before the start of the first game, so that way you can get your fantasy football lineup set. Of course, thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports Show. And of course, like I said, as always, I'm your host, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo as my Nindo. And we're going to get in today to some of the waiver wire gems before your week one start, because as always, I commend you if you drafted a while back. But even if you drafted this week, it's hard to avoid injuries. You're looking at A.Ekeler already looking like he may not play week one. You're also looking at G.Edwards. I mean, the day of the first game of the season, potentially out for the season, ACL. As you already know, the Ravens already lost J.K. Dobbins. They're struggling right now. So we're gonna talk about what you can do to fix that, to kind of fix those situations. If you're one of those unlucky people that's looking in a tough situation right now, trying to figure out, what am I going to do to replace G.Edwards, to replace A.Ekeler potentially. If you need that option, a streaming option for week one, we're taking care of that today. Mostly running backs, because we're losing a lot of running backs. There's a lot of wide receivers out there. Now, in order for somebody to make this waiver wire gems, I'm looking at somebody that's drafted in less than 50% of leagues. I want less than half of ESPN Fantasy Football leagues to have drafted this person. It's not going to be somebody that you typically would have drafted in a normal 10-man league. So we're going to be going through those waiver wire gems today. But, of course, before we get everything started, as always, no pressure. But if you do smoke them, now's the time that I invite you to smoke them if you got them, baby. Let's get everything started up. Let's get everything sparked up. And let's get right into the news. Now, to get everything started off today, I want to respond to a comment that I got on one of my last videos from Nils Droz. I hope I said that correctly. Thank you so much, first of all, for the comment, Nils. Nils said, first of all, I'm not sure who to start on my lineups. Last two flex position, full PPR. So there's going to be 8 guys that he's looking between. We're looking at Raheem Monster, Brandon Cooks, David Montgomery, Juju Smith, Antonio Brown, DJ Chark, Jerry Jeudy, or Jalen Waddle. Can you help me? That's what he asked. And I absolutely can help you. Thank you so much for the question, of course, Nils, and thanks so much for rocking with the Huddle Chat Sports Show. I love your question. It's a tough question. I can see why you have this issue here. With full point PPR, I'm looking at going off. Very first off tops, I'm going Raheem Monster. You're looking at Raheem Monster having a nice, easy setup this week. You're also looking at them probably going with a run-heavy approach. And while Raheem Monster has value, you want to take advantage of that. I think Raheem Moster's definitely the start this week in one of those flex positions. Now, between the other two, I'm stuck. I want to go David Montgomery from the Chicago Bears, because I also think the Chicago Bears will go with the run-heavy approach. I also think David Montgomery has an insane workload, so he's going to be the guy to go with. But with full-point PPR, you're looking at Chris Godwin may not be able to play tonight, so Antonio Brown would not be a bad choice either. If you wanted to go with him tonight, I would not be mad at you. But my personal decision, I always like to go running backs when I have the availability. I'm going Raheem Monster and David Montgomery, but if you felt like playing Antonio Brown, my man, plug Antonio Brown in, because he's going to have a good game tonight as well. I think him and David Montgomery, that's a coin toss. And like I said, you got to take advantage of David Montgomery and Raheem Monster. David Montgomery is going to have a tough schedule coming down at the end of the year, and you're going to be looking at Raheem Monster being able to start him while he still has most of his health and the stranglehold on that number one running back spot. Thank again, Nils, so much for the question. Now let's get started in today on the waiver wire on the waiver wire gems for week one, because as you heard, you're looking at G.Edwards and J.K. Dobbins out for the Baltimore Ravens for the season. Now you're stuck looking at what their options are. You're also looking at A.Ekeler potentially not being able to play. So I want to focus on, first off, how we can replace G.Edwards. Looking at what options there are there on the Baltimore Ravens team that we can replace him with. You're looking at the most added player in fantasy football for week one right now is going to be Le'Veon Bell. You know Le'Veon. He used to be the number one running back in the league. He used to also be the number 2 wide receiver in the league behind his own teammate, Antonio Brown. That man was a god when he played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then he went to the New York Jets and really didn't distinguish himself very much. He went to Kansas City last year, didn't do a damn thing in Kansas City. But honestly, I think that was a factor of where he was. You look at how the New York Jets used him. They didn't give Le'Veon the ball like they should have. They didn't give Le'Veon as many carries as they paid him for. They didn't give Le'Veon Bell spent most of his time in New York pass blocking for Sam Darnold, and it was terrible to watch. It was sad to see. If you owned Le'Veon Bell during that time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Last year for KC, he was backing up Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They only really even picked him up because Damian Williams was out for the entire year last year as well. So I think Le'Veon Bell was more or less just kind of a change of pace running back, somebody to help the Kansas City Chiefs when they kind of needed a little break for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's why he's not still there, because they didn't really need him last season. They just picked him up to help them out at the end of the season when they kind of needed a stopgap in plays. But I think Le'Veon Bell he's primed for a ton of touches for Baltimore. I think if you have the opportunity and somebody in your league wasn't already smart, which they might have been, they probably have been. If you're somebody in your league already went out and got Le'Veon Bell, I mean, congrats to them. Give them a hand, because I think Le'Veon Bell, there's a potential for Le'Veon. I don't go out and start Le'Veon this week unless I have to. Unless I'm looking at Gus Edwards was my flex and I don't really have another flex option. I'm not starting Le'Veon Bell this week. I want to wait and see what's going to happen. He's only been there for a couple of days, so you can't imagine that Le'Veon's going to get a ton of touches. I think week 1, ton of touches goes to Tyson Williams for Baltimore, an undrafted free agent who's been there for the entire camp. So if there's one running back that's going to get the majority of the carries from Baltimore, it's going to be Tyson Williams in week 1. They also just added Devonta Freeman to their roster on their practice squad. The hope is that he eventually comes up. I think by week 3, Devonta Freeman is a part of the Baltimore Ravens 53-man roster. I also think Baltimore. So I'm looking at Devonta Freeman as a person to watch this week. If you're looking for somebody to really replace Gus Edwards, I'm looking at Tyson Williams, because most likely Le'Veon's already gone in your league. Tyson may hopefully still be out there. But Le'Veon Bell, if you did get him, I wouldn't start him this week. I wait on Le'Veon Bell, see what he has to offer. But I'm looking at Devonta Freeman and Le'Veon Bell at the end of the day, later on in the next couple of weeks, being the two main backs. Le'Veon Bell is great out of the backfield with the pass, which is going to help out Lamar Jackson. They're both great every down backs. I don't see Tyson Williams being a long-term thing, but you never can tell with fantasy football and with running backs by committee. So we're going to have to wait and see. But those are the 3 running backs on Baltimore to replace Gus Edwards. I also really like Tony Jones Jr. for the New Orleans Saints. They just released Latavius Murray, which has to let you know that they have some form of extreme trust behind Alvin Kamara with Tony Jones Jr., because Latavius Murray was the man filling in that role. So Tony Jones Jr. is another player that I this week am adding to my watch list for the waiver wire gems. I don't think he's somebody that I go out and pick up, but if you have an extra spot on your roster, or you're looking at somebody to add to your watch list to potentially replace one of those players that was kind of a Mr. Irrelevant pick for you, Tony Jones Jr. is definitely a guy that you want to keep an eye on this week on the waiver wire. As far as running backs go, I got one more for you. I'm looking at J.D. McKissic from Washington. J.D. McKissic from Washington, he's the backup running back to Antonio Gibson. He's a great change of pace running back, and he also finished in top 20 scoring in PPR for running backs last season. So J.D. McKissic has some extreme value. So if you're looking at somebody potentially to stack that running back spot on your roster, if you were feeling a little light in the ass at running back after your draft, I definitely go out and look at J.D. McKissic and Tony Jones Jr. on the waiver wire. Now, as far as receivers, I want to go on to those real quick for you, but there's something crazy that I've got to point out really quick. Why haven't you hit the like button for this video? Make sure you're smashing on that like button. It helps me out way more than you even understand, and help yourself out. And hit that subscription button, hit that notifications bell, so as soon as episodes come available, because I'm coming out with daily episodes, I'm coming out with multiple episodes per day, so I got hot content coming out that you need access to. As soon as it comes available, it will come out on the notifications if you hit that notifications bell. So make sure you smash that like button, and make sure you do yourself that favor by hitting the notifications bell, so you know as soon as this episode and any episodes after it come out. Now, moving on to the wide receivers, I have one wide receiver for you guys today because, like I said, wide receiver is pretty stacked. You're looking at most likely you probably don't have an issue finding wide receivers. I got 2 of them for you today, as a matter of fact. I'm looking at Jalen Waddle from Miami. He may not have been drafted in. He's been drafted in less than 50% of leagues, so he may not have been drafted in your league. Jalen Waddle is definitely somebody that you want to go out and snag. He's definitely going to be somebody that's going to be big for Tua Tagovailoa this season. But my main waiver wire gem for wide receivers this week is going to be Dwayne Eskridge, D. Eskridge, as he likes to be called, from the Seattle Seahawks. I think he's in for a big role this year. He's probably my biggest waiver wire gem on this list for week 1. Go out and get D. Eskridge if you have the availability on your team and you're not crazy full on wide receivers on your roster. D. Eskridge is going to carve out an insanely big role in that Seattle Seahawks offense, and with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, plus a good running back in Chris Carson, they're going to have too many keys on the Seattle Seahawks offense for them to even really be paying attention to Dwayne Eskridge until he starts going crazy. So I think D. Eskridge is somebody you go out and even potentially think about starting this week even though the Indianapolis Colts are a really good matchup for the Seattle Seahawks. I want to thank Nils Droz again. Thanks so much for the comment. And thank you so much for checking out this week's episode, or today's episode, of the Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports Show. As always, I'm your host, Dallas Clark, also known as Indo Esmenindo. Make sure you drop in the comments. Leave me any stardoms and situms questions. Leave me any trade advice you have. Leave me anything about your fantasy football. You got a funny name. You got a funny reward for first place. You got a funny punishment for last place. Drop any of your fantasy football stuff in my comments. I love it. I'll post it up here on one of the episodes live. So drop it in the comments. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter at The Huddle Chat. Find me on Facebook at The Huddle Chat Sports. And get in contact with us, because I'm here to help you win your fantasy football league and leave those other suckers in the dust so we can skip together with the winnings at the end of the year. But as always, I'm your boy Dallas Clark. I hope your plants never stop growing and the news never stop showing. Go out and watch that football today. Go out and I'm going for the Cowboys. I think it's going to be 23-17 Dallas Cowboys. That's my prediction for tonight's game. I think the Dallas Cowboys defense hopefully can step up and stifle Tom Brady. Hopefully they're a little bit too busy, too mentally not there, getting their rings and stuff like that. I'm hoping the Cowboys can come out and punch them in the mouth, because I've got big hopes for the Dallas Cowboys this season, as much as I like to talk crap about them. But anyway, let's get up out of here, y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure you click on one of these couple videos or hit the playlist, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks so much, y'all. I'm up out of here. Thank you.